Welcome to the Wandering Tangent Podcast. I'm BJ. With me is Jeff. And today we're on our third of our Star Wars trilogy of episodes about Star Wars trilogies. The trilogy about trilogies. How about that?
The trilogy of the trilogies.
The trilogy of the trilogy. So today we are talking about episode 7, The Force Awakens, episode 8, The Last Jedi, and episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. When I was thinking about it last night, I kept calling it like the Last Skywalker and like the Rise of the Jedi or something like that.
Yeah, these names all kind of mesh together, don't they?
Yeah.
Rising, ending,
Rising
something.
and
Yeah, returning. Yeah, something.
you wake up, you get out of bed for the last time, and then you go rise. I don't know. I don't know. That sounded better in my head before I started talking.
It was flawless in the mind, and then it came out. It's like, what? What was that?
Oh, yeah. So,
Yeah. So BJ. Yeah. So this is the big question. What did you think, BJ? Did you not love it? Was it just not epic to see the final film in this long-awaited 9-movie set that we have been waiting for so many years, and we even put off watching it for like 2 years or something like that until now?
Yeah.
So what do you think? Was it not amazing?
Am I detecting sarcasm? In all honesty, I tried to keep as open a mind as possible. So,
Yeah.
because I mean this in the kindest way possible. I figured that you would not. So to be totally honest, I actually liked, well, episode 7 was not quite as bad as I remembered.
Okay.
It was, I would say episode 7, like the first half hour of episode 7 was actually pretty solid, but it kind of lost gas after that.
Alrighty.
And then episode
everyone's
8.
favorite, number 8.
Everyone's favorite, the one that I think we were texting back and forth. I think it took, I know I had to do it in 2 sittings. I don't know how many sittings it took you to watch The Last Jedi.
Definitely more than one.
The last.
And it wasn't even that I was busy. It wasn't like, I got to do this other thing. I'll come back to it. It's like, no, I got to turn it off.
It's like I'm not in the mood for this right now.
I have to shut this down. Yeah. I will come back when I am ready to come back.
So yeah, episode 8 is just a complete train wreck for reasons we were probably talking about. And episode 9, I have conflicted feelings about 9. I feel like it's going to be one of those things that the more I think about it, probably the less I'm going to like it.
Okay.
But in the moment, and like having just watched episode 8, it wasn't as bad as I was afraid it was going to be.
Okay.
I actually enjoyed some stuff about it.
Okay.
I mean, it was a hot mess and a terribly written train wreck. But at least it was a fun hot mess and a terribly written train wreck as compared to the Last Jedi, which is just a totally not fun train wreck of totally hot garbage, which is on fire.
Okay. Interesting. So you would say that if you flushed away all your expectations completely and you watched episode 9, would it be considered an okay movie?
Okay might be a little strong, but it did better than 8, than Last Jedi. And maybe this is just me. From the little bit of research I did, I know episode 7 and episode 9 had at least one writer in common. Episode 8 was written and directed by Ryan, I think how do you say his name? Ryan? It's like Ryan, except with an I instead of a Y. Ryan Johnson. And instead of the So pretty much from what I could tell, the only person who had like the only what do you call him, executive bigwig that was the connecting tissue between all three movies was one of the producers. And if I look at episode 7 and episode 9, I can kind of see that maybe they had a plan, but in like episode 8, the Ryan Johnson was just kind of like, I'm just gonna do whatever, man. What plan?
Mm. Okay, so yeah. Well, my opinion is that so you okay, I don't want to move past you too quickly, but yeah, you basically, as far as like an actiony movie, if you give it a very low expectations as action adventure, blowing things up, surviving stuff, if you're into that, it can kind of be entertaining at moments, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the plot is absolute nonsense, but
yeah,
at the trying to think how to phrase this because I'm going to try to say positive
because most
things
of
about
the people listening right now, they either don't care or they hated it. That's probably the two main categories. There's a sliver of people out there that actually like this movie, but they're in the big minority, I would say. At least it seems like that to me. It's very hard to find somebody who says, yeah, the movie was good. But you do find them. They are out there. They just like Star Wars, and they don't care about expectations of anything. It just was what it was, so they went and watched it. And I don't know, like, it's weird because but I will say there's a lot of diehard Star Wars fans out there, and none of them, the really hardcore fan people, none of them really like this movie, and I completely get why they think that. I do.
No, really?
No, really? Yeah, I mean, you watch it and it's pretty obvious. But there were years ago. Okay, we're gonna go back in time and story time. Like 5-6 years ago, I was in a room full of nerds, and we were all talking about all the nerd things that we constantly obsess over, and they were all excited about Disney and about J.J. Abrams, and they said, well, they probably won't do a perfect job. They probably will make mistakes. It's realistic. But most of them were thinking, at least some movies will be made, and it'll probably be good enough. I mean, Disney made Pirates of the Caribbean. It was at least fun, even though... Anyway, we're not going to always talk about another movie. We're talking about this movie. But the point is they thought they would at least be a basically good films. And they were not expecting the train wreck. And I told them all years ago, which doesn't matter today at all. I'm like 5 years too late, 10 years too late. I'm just way too late about making this prediction. But I never thought that J.J. Abrams was a good fit for Star Wars. I don't think he's a good fit for Star Trek. I don't like his storylines. I don't like any of it. I don't.
I was gonna say, you don't think J.J. Abrams is a good fit for anything.
I think that he can make a few movies if you want, like a few low budget films somewhere. I have nothing against him personally because he's probably, amongst the many people at Hollywood, he's probably a decent person. He doesn't seem like overly arrogant or anything. It's just that he doesn't quite understand what he's doing. And I think there's a lot of other people in Hollywood that would be a much better pick, that have a better understanding of things. And you see that there were many different people that directed The Mandalorian. It wasn't just one person, but all of them did better than J.J. Abrams. All of them. You could have reached out and just plucked any kind of director from Hollywood, and the chances are you would have picked somebody better than what they picked. It's like, and this is sad because I feel like this is like the big championship game. Hollywood just got the perfect shot. This was the perfect opportunity to make lots of money, to make 3 movies that everyone wanted to see, and to make even more movies and have TV shows and have all sorts of side stuff about Lando Calrissian and Han Solo, and you do all these side movies about other characters, and it could be this big, huge thing. But honestly, I think this is a giant fumble of an opportunity. So that's my negative side. And I have my own thing about what I think should have been different, but anyway, yeah, I think it's a great fumble. Now, on the positive side, I think watching it again, I wasn't as negative now as I was years ago. When I watched episode 7, yeah, I agree. There's things that I don't like about it, but I don't know. I'm not as angry about it as I used to be. And I think it's stupid to get angry over movies, obviously. I'm being a little dramatic, but when it first came out, I thought it was a real missed opportunity to really rebuild the Star Wars universe and to set things up for lots of movies and to have the same kind of character arcs that were interesting and fun to have, like the original trilogy did. But, I mean, none of that happened. And I think that the moral of the story here is that Star Wars movies seem like they're easy to make. It seems like, hey, you throw in a movie, couple TIE fighters, couple Jedi battles, just throw in some Star Destroyers. Hey, throw in a villain there that cackles and laughs and is overconfident. And you throw all that into the pot, you got a good movie, right? No, it's not like that at all. I think people that worked on this movie really didn't quite understand how much thought and good ideas and how much effort went into those movies to make them the writing and everything fit together. And when you watch the original movies, the storyline flows so well. And that yeah, these just kind of are trying to be movies. That's about as negative as I could be. Oh my goodness, that was a lot more negative than I thought it would be. But yeah, I watched episode 7. I guess if you don't care about any of that and you just want to sit down and enjoy it for what it is, you could probably watch it once or twice, I guess. There's things about it that just don't work, but if people want to ignore that and just have a good time and they like these movies, I respect their opinion for it. In fact, maybe they're the smart ones, the ones that can just not worry about all that stuff and just enjoy things for what they are. I don't know. I got to shut up. Okay, go ahead, PJ.
So kind of going off what you said about the Mandalorian. Yeah, it did have a bunch of different directors, but I'm looking up right now. I think what helped the Mandalorian, at least season 1. I still haven't watched any of the seasons past season 1. In season 1, all but 2 of the episodes were written by the same dude.
Yeah.
And so I think that helps the overall flow. And
probably.
I think if there's one great big glaring weakness about the sequels, is that it doesn't seem like there was one guiding hand behind it, you know.
Absolutely.
For all the stuff that people talk yang about for all the crap people throw at the prequels, you know, at very least George Lucas, he had an idea where he was going and he went there. Maybe he didn't do it in the best way, but it didn't feel like, in my opinion at least, like one movie and then like a completely different movie and then like another movie and then like the third movie was like, oh, well, crap, we were supposed to do this over 2 movies, but the guy who did the second movie just kind of did his own thing. So now we have to cram 2 movies worth of stuff into 1 movie.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what it felt like to me.
Yeah, and it's astounding to me. Out of all the things you would mess up, why are you messing up on that? Like, we don't know what to do with this movie, so let's just kind of like do whatever. This is not an improv jazz session where we just show up and make up whatever we want to be creative. This is, you're setting out like a 5 or 6 year plan. You're going to hire all these actors and writers, and you're going to have like a beginning and an end, and you might deviate. Maybe something doesn't work and you need to adjust to make changes. That's very normal. But everyone thought they had a plan, and I honestly think that based on the final product, there was no plan. This was like, we don't know what else to do. So I don't get it. It's like
Yeah.
you get it, you have an airplane and you fly somewhere. Once you're 30,000 feet in the sky, you're like, okay, but where are we going exactly? Like, which airport are we flying to? I don't know.
Yeah,
It's so lost. It's all
yeah,
lost. All three of these movies are just, in terms of storyline, they're just out there lost wandering around.
well, I think the first one had the potential to be a good start. I mean, yes, it borrowed heavy from A New Hope, which is I feel like episode 7 had the had the potential to be a good start. At very least, I will say they had some potentially interesting characters. Like Finn could have been a really interesting character if they would have like dive into the stormtrooper backstory a little more.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like in episode 8, Finn, the potentially interesting character, is like turned into the B crew comedy relief like immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And then, at the very least, I will say that episode 8 is just bad, right?
Bad
Like,
writing.
I mean,
Just say it. Let the words come out.
yeah,
Bad writing.
I'm not even gonna call like, I'm not gonna say it's just a bad Star Wars movie. I'm just gonna say it's like a bad movie. Period.
Okay.
And like I said, 7 and 8, 7 I liked more than what I remembered.
Mm-hmm.
9 and like I said, 9 feels like the kind of thing I'm gonna like less the more I think about it. But in the moment, it was better than 8, and I was okay with that.
Mm-hmm. I think there is something to the second time you go through those movies, because the first time I had watched them, it was just like I was repulsed by them. And then watching them again later, I think it's better because it's like less of those bad feelings need to be there. I could just watch them and say, oh, well, and yeah, and try to get something from them. There are
I,
moments that I do like in these movies where there's a brief moment where finally maybe something that works was on the screen.
yeah, I can kind of appreciate what I think they're going for, even though they they missed the layup or whatever, whatever analogy or metaphor you want to go with.
Mm-hmm.
So
Do you think younger people will like these movies and it's the older people that are more disconnected with them?
it's hard to say because I'm not a younger person anymore.
Yeah, I wonder. I think younger people that view Star Wars, they just kind of consume it in all different ways. They watch Lego versions of it, and then they have cartoons, and then they finally see the movies. And I don't know. It's all weird. Each generation is experiencing it differently. And I think the younger generation probably doesn't have such high expectations of it as maybe the older generation does. But anyway, so let's come down to the basic question that we're circling around. Would you recommend that anybody watches this? Like if no one had, if there is somebody who out there, which there are few, who have never seen Star Wars, would you recommend that they actually watch episodes 1 through 6 and then continue watching 7, 8, and 9?
I mean, it's up to general. I, hmm. I it was just like like The Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker. I would say, yeah, sure, they're not great, but they're entertaining enough. But when you throw The Last Jedi in there, it just drags everything down.
Mm. Okay.
There's
So you would actually just like
and
skip that one.
I mean, you honestly kind of could.
Yeah.
like
Yeah. You could skip it.
I mean, like, what happens in Last Jedi that has any lasting effect on the plot outside of, well, are we talking spoilers?
No, we're not talking spoilers yet.
Okay,
But
outside of one particular thing that happens in The Last Jedi, there's not much that affects the rest of the movies, or that affects the other two movies.
yeah, so you could skip it. Or you could just skip all three of them and go just watch 1 through 6, and that's where the story ends. I almost think that it ends on a higher note that way.
It does, definitely
It
does.
does. I wasn't completely against the ending of Rise of Skywalker either. I mean, there were some good points about the ending. So I actually wouldn't recommend it. I would say just watch the original ones.
This is my
If you're
surprised
really,
face.
yeah, and just watch up to episode 6. Consider that done. And if you ever get the inclination, then, I mean, watch it. It won't like ruin everything. It's just, I mean, they did the best they could.
So
it is what it is.
So after all the trash you talked about them, are you saying that you would recommend the prequels?
No, I would recommend the prequels. But I would recommend watching 4, 5, and 6 first, and then going back and watching 1, 2, and 3, and then just stopping there, and watch The Mandalorian, and yeah. No, and the old Ewok adventures from the 80s. Watch those too.
Let's not go that far.
Okay, let's not go that far. But if they just watch those 6 movies, then yeah, they've experienced Star Wars. They can check it off their list.
I can't get what you're saying with watching the original trilogy first, but on the other hand, I am kind of curious of what the experience would be if you did not know that Palpatine turned out to be the Emperor.
Yeah, you got a good point there. Yeah, they might be funner that way.
I mean, I guess it depends on which surprise you want more. Like, it turns out Palpatine is the Emperor, or there's the big surprise is that Vader is Luke's father. Luke's father. Like,
yeah, because that would ruin the other one.
Like, which big surprise do you want?
I think Vader being Luke's father is the bigger surprise. But it's sad because I think that is spoiled so much that if anyone never had seen it, they'll know that anyway. It's a common line that people just say. Luke, I am your father.
It's in the public zeitgeist.
It is. So there's no hope of anyone actually watching Star Wars and being surprised by that plot twist. But we can always hope. There's always a fool's hope. Okay, anyway, should we just spoil? Let's get into spoilers. Let's talk about this. Yeah. I started off with a very negative comment, which I was not really planning on, but it just kind of like came out. Like the feelings are there.
You say something negative?
I know.
About something you don't like in Star Wars? Why, never. It's not like you've talked about like for an hour between 3 podcasts about your distaste for, say, the special editions or anything like that.
Yeah. I guess I'm usually
Which, by the way, don't talk about this. Which, by the way, I'm not letting you talk about that this time around. No.
No. Okay. No.
If I hear you start talking about special editions, I'm gonna drive to your house and mute your microphone. Or be like, BJ, where you going? Knock, knock, knock.
I just came over there. Mute. All right.
I'll text your wife and tell her, cut the cord, Jeff's wife. Cut the cord.
Yeah, you don't need to explain that text. Just like write it down. Cut the cord.
Cut the cord.
Where's an extension cord? I'll find it somewhere. Start cutting. Okay, PJ, yes. How in the bloomin' world do the Jedi need to end if the Sith are out there rampaging around the galaxy, like conjuring star destroyers from somehow, and the First Order seems to be the most highly resilient, survivable organization ever devised, where they just always come back and are well organized and well supported, and have all this material wealth because, yeah. And
it's
why do the Jedi need to go away when everything needs them?
Because apparently Rian Johnson really didn't like the first 3 movies. I don't know.
Because I think somebody was like, if you tease the audience, Like, don't give them everything they want. Like, tease them. Make
Now
them,
see,
like, not get what they want. And then eventually you'll just disappoint them in the end.
that's why I think, your personal distaste for the works of J.J. Abrams aside, he at least it felt like the movies that he did had a through line and he had respect for the previous works because, the end of The Force Awakens is that Rey finds Luke and she hands him his lightsaber and there's just this big dramatic swell of music and they rotate around him. That's the end of the movie. And then you get the Rian Johnson movie and it opens with Luke taking a lightsaber and like throwing it behind his back. Like a 2-year wait for that
Yeah,
and
but
there's no
here's the
emotional
thing.
payout.
I don't think Rian Johnson wrote everything about The Last Jedi.
No, he is the sole credited writer.
Hmm.
He is story by, directed by, written by him in those three things.
But he was given, like, story elements and said, but he could have changed them, right?
Yeah,
but why do you do that? Why do you have 3 movies and in the middle you just said, okay, nobody knows what they're doing here? Rian Johnson, you don't have very much experience, which he didn't at the time. Go and do whatever you want with it.
Like from what I read, it's trying to look up stuff online about Star Wars, good luck finding an unbiased reliable source. I guess Abrams gave him some recommendations. Like I read that Abrams wrote a pass of episode 8, but Johnson decided to go his own direction and it shows.
I think it's a conspiracy. It's a deep conspiracy, BJ. What happened is Abrams had done 7.
You can't blame Abrams for everything.
He wrote 7 and he's like, I don't know what to do. Why don't we just give it to somebody else who doesn't have very much experience? And then when everything fell apart as a big disaster, it makes Abrams look better. Because now it's like, oh, look, other people can't do it too. I know how
Welcome to the Wondering Tangent Conspiracy Theory Corner.
I mean,
did Bigfoot give him this idea, Jeff?
Yes, Bigfoot. He did. He saw Star Wars. And, Bigfoot is crafty. He can, sneak into the set and get insider information.
What if Bigfoot was Chewbacca this whole time?
Yeah. He's friends with Chewbacca. Really. The two of them get along. They have the same language that has, 50,000 different tones to it that each have a different long phrase and description that they translate to. But, okay, obviously it's just a dumb conspiracy. I don't know what happened. The realistic thing is that people just made mistakes. They didn't know what they were doing. They thought they knew what they were doing, and they didn't. Human beings are human beings. They're going to say, yeah, we can write a Star Wars movie, and then it turns out it's not as easy as everyone thought it was. And everyone was all down on George Lucas for not being perfect. Apparently, it takes a lot of effort to write these things. But if they just would have gotten a good, a writer that knew what they were doing, these movies probably would have been fine. They
were in dire need of someone to write the whole through line.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much the directing that's this big of an issue, but it's just the writing. Nobody knew where to go with these movies. And I think part of the problem, and I'm going to get away from blaming them all the time. I think part of the problem is that these movies were so well wrapped up back in 1983. They got to a good ending. They finished off the villain. Everything was done, and the universe was saved. It was a happily ever after moment. And Star Wars movies are based upon dystopia. You're trying to fight back against the dystopia that is the Empire and the scheming of the Sith. All of that was wrapped up, which means if you're going to make 7, 8, and 9, then you got a lot of work to do to make it work. And I think the people who put this together kind of didn't understand that. They thought, well, it's just Star Wars. You just kind of like bring back the Empire, and it's the First Order now, and yeah, there's a bad guy. Here he is. Oh, and where do we find bad guys? Well, Star Wars only comes with one villain. Uh, oh my goodness, I don't know what to say. It's just such a disaster, and I'm glad we can talk about it now, because I think people, if I was to say this years ago, people would say I was crazy, and they'll still say that I'm crazy, but I think now most people realize this was a train wreck. Anyway,
I will say that as far as the bad guys go, when I was writing notes, I mean, Kylo Ren is that's another. I'm around about 8 again. This is going to happen a lot, I think. Is that episode 8 like starts with them like, hey, let's immediately take one of the recurring villains and turn him into a giant joke, right? By doing the bad comedy routine of Poe talking. I was like, yeah, I'm trying to get a hold of General Hugs. Hello, can you hear me? It's like,
I know.
It's like this is one of your recurring villains, and you're turning him into a joke. The first thing. Ow. Yeah. Like, is that why they had, or is that why they ended up bringing back Palpatine? Is it because the entire movie happened to like totally make their recurring villains non-threatening, so they had to bring in new ones?
Maybe. I mean, they didn't really have a villain. The episode 7, you were supposed to get a villain, but instead they kind of like rip off Harry Potter, I think. Is it like Snope? Is that
Snoke?
What? Snoke?
Snoke.
What is his name?
Don't worry.
His name is not memorable at all.
No, I was doing the same thing when I was like writing out notes. I kept having to scroll up like, what's that guy's name? Zeldazar? There's a joke
funny.
that like 2 people in the universe are going to get, but at least I made you laugh.
Yeah. No, we'll explain it, but we're like nerds. We're very big nerds, and we roleplayed. We played Dungeons and Dragons for years and years. Not so much these days because we're just boring. But yeah, we had a villain that we couldn't remember the name of the villain. So every time we get together, the name would change to something else.
Oh,
it was not a memorable name. Zeldazar.
It kind of turned to a running joke, but yeah, it's.
Yeah, so he sounds like Voldemort. Does this guy remind you of Voldemort at all?
Oh,
maybe a little bit to me. Voldemort, I would say, is a better, well-written character, but
yeah, I mean, it's not hard to be better, well-written than. I almost said his name wrong. I almost said Snork.
Snork. Let's just call him Snork.
Snoke, Snopes.
Snoops. Snoopy the Snork the Sith.
Snoopy the Sith.
That would be terrifying. Is like Snoopy came out. You're the Sith that's behind it all. Okay. Yeah, it's generic empty villain is what Snoop is. Snork. I can't even say his name now.
And I'm thinking about it now, so I might as well do the hot take now. I feel like even having the Emperor come back as a clone could have worked if they didn't just suddenly at the opening of episode 9, holy crap, it's the Emperor!
If it was more of a reveal.
Yeah, like...
They kind of give it away, like the moment the text comes up.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden Palpatine's here.
Yeah. Surprise, we didn't like hide that from you and then suddenly reveal it.
Like maybe at the risk of doing a repeat of what Jeff would do to make the prequels better, like in my mind, if...
Okay, this is the BJ fan edit. Go ahead.
Yeah, like maybe... Yeah, here we go, BJ fan edit. Like maybe instead of whatever the plot was in episode 8, turn that into what was the plot of episode 8? Like the entire plot was them trying to save the fleet, and like
Yeah.
instead they save a bunch of horses or whatever.
They were going to save the Rebel Alliance.
We were
They
gonna
did manage to save some horses.
we're going to save
Who are
Rebel Alliance.
going to wander aimlessly on the planet.
We
And they're
met-
domesticated, so hopefully they can survive in the wild. But we're not gonna. We don't go there, right?
we managed to save some horses. We used the horses to cause a bunch of property damage because we're sticking to the man who has like all these indentured servants and slaves, and like it's totally not going to be the indentured servants and slaves who are going to have to clean up our mess. Heck no, because we're sticking to the man. But yeah,
Yeah. I think Ryan Johnson like hates rich people. I'm gonna be honest. Like
oh
I
yeah,
I get that people have varying different beliefs out there, but they kind of hit on a theme that Star Wars usually doesn't really focus on.
I also love the entire they're arms traders. Us who work for a paramilitary organization, we hate we hate arms traders.
I mean, they sell us everything. Yeah.
I wasn't going to be this pedantic about things, but we might as well get his way now. Why is the Resistance called the Resistance in Episode 7?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That was like one of the big things. It's like, it's one thing. I get that names evolve, I guess, but why do they have to evolve? I mean, it was called the Rebel Alliance, but you could call it the Republic, and now it's the Resistance? What?
Like, well, I think like the Resistance and the Republic were technically separate entities, but the Republic supported the Resistance. But I'm over here like, why didn't you just make them like a Republic task force in Episode 7, and then in Episode 8, like after the whole Star Killer thing, like breaks up the Republic, have them call the Resistance in 8. Like that makes more sense, right?
Wait, run that by me again. So you have
so
say it to us slow so I can actually understand.
So like in the totally pedantic BJ fan edit to fix the name of the Resistance. In Episode 7, just like have them be like a Republic task force, right?
So they're a segment of the Republic. They're
because I think Resistance, like I think the Resistance kind of was because they're like supported by the Republic. So like a group called the Resistance
like
has
an
like
underground rebel group of rebels, an alliance of rebels.
Like have them be like Republic Task Force in 8, or not 8, in 7. Then like in like after the First Order has Starkiller base like bring down the Republic, they can be the Republic or they can be the Resistance in 8 because they're actually resisting something rather than being a government-sponsored organization.
It's hard to know what they are exactly. They're basically the Rebel Alliance, but here again,
sponsored.
The Resistance.
We're the Resistance. It's like, why are you the Resistance? You're working for the Republic. You can't
call resist yourself if you are the legitimate government.
You are the man. You can't be the Resistance.
That's the thing. Like, is there?
It's like at that point, shouldn't the First Order be like the Resistance because they're like the Imperial Remnant?
Yeah. So they're the They're
right?
the Resistance. The Resistance against... Yeah, like, who's in charge?
Who's in charge here?
Who's in charge of this galaxy? Who's in charge of the script? Nobody's in charge.
Like, that's something interesting. As part of my research for this stuff, I watched a bunch of YouTube videos, and someone brought up that one of the big weaknesses in the sequel trilogy is that they don't really touch on the politics of the universe.
I was expecting that years ago when this movie came out. I thought, well, the first thing you do is you establish how things are different. Because in A New Hope, it was about 10, 20 minutes into that movie. You know the basics you need to know about the politics. You know that the Empire is trying to take over the Senate. The Emperor's in charge, but the Senate is still making rules. But it's their empire is struggling because they still have to appease the Senate, and they don't even spend much time on it. It's just kind
No,
of they go
it,
through it, and then we're on to our
it
adventure scenes.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like maybe like like 20 seconds of dialogue. They talk about the Senate. They talk about having to keep the Senate happy, and then Marv Tarkin comes in, and he's like, "We don't have to worry about it anymore because the Emperor has dissolved the Senate." So like
Yeah,
it it lays
which
out.
is like the very moment the Galactic Empire starts, or at least it's finished at that point, because there's no
Yeah,
Senate to direct it anymore.
yeah it yeah it lays out the groundwork of what's going on, and I know a lot of people hate on the prequels because there's a lot of politics in that, but it makes sense because politics is
Yeah,
how the Emperor comes to power.
yeah.
He doesn't just get a bunch of Sith goons and takes over. He takes
He has
over
to
from the
scheme.
inside.
Exactly.
So it makes sense for the prequels to have politics. Then you get to the sequels and it's like, yep, the Republic. Oh no, the Republic's gone.
And I
Was
have to
was
be
that
honest.
change? We don't know because they don't touch on what the Republic does and how it's different
No,
than the Empire.
it's
It
hard to
just
say what's going on, and I don't think they've done. They still don't know. Correct me if you think I'm wrong, but based on everything I've seen that Disney has come out with, they've never tackled the how did the First Order get to this point where they are even bigger and tougher and worse than the Galactic Empire was. Like, how did that transition happen? They haven't covered it. It's still a black area of the storyline that hasn't been really on screen yet. And real quick, the old boring lines in the first three movies that everyone hates, I actually like those scenes. I guess I'm just a boring person, but I actually like those story building scenes.
yeah. As for the setup of the First Order, I don't know. Maybe I haven't watched like most of the quote unquote TV shows on like Disney Plus or anything. So
Like
I don't.
TV shows like Endor, The Mandalorian,
Yeah,
because I
like
think those shows are the Andor. See
I.
that
Yeah, I've not watched Andor yet, but I've heard good things about it. Like,
they're at different time periods too. They're not at the same time. Like Andor is early on. That's like before New Hope, and the Mandalorian is after Return of the Jedi.
yeah,
So
I do want to watch more of The Mandalorian. I do want to watch Andor because like even the YouTube channels online who's like entire things that hate to watch things, like even a bunch of those guys like Andor.
hmm.
So
Yeah, I
I
thought Andor was all right. I wouldn't. None of them are as good as the original trilogy to me, but that doesn't matter. I can still enjoy them. In fact, there's really good moments in the Mandalorian that I thought were really good, that really help to build up the Star Wars universe. Because these films, they're like a small window in time. You think that the Star Wars universe is huge, but in reality, these movies are just a small little tiny segment of what's going on. And having a TV show that can show a lot of different things, and you meet a lot of different characters, and you visit people on just some random planet somewhere and some homestead and a group of people trying to survive, and you get a feel for how people are really living in this universe. And there's different worlds with people in different circumstances. And it's good. It's good. There's a lot of good things that Disney is managing to do with Star Wars. It's not all bad. A lot of it I quite think is going well. But it's almost like the parts where they're not trying too hard, the, the writing is better. But in these movies where they spent so much money and they tried to get them so epically awesome that everyone would just be wowed by them, it just doesn't work.
oh,
Um,
I think it's something that we touched on when I think it was we were talking about the Magnificent Seven, is that not every story has to raise the stakes, and
yeah,
that that works in Mandalorian, at least in season one, because it's pretty low stakes. It's like it's the Mandalorian. He's trying to save the kid.
Yep.
And that story, it doesn't have... What was that?
You had a sound.
Yeah, my Alexa decided to beep at me for some reason. Okay, that was interesting. I'm like, oh crap, what just died? What just died?
Okay.
So
some random machine decided to interrupt you.
Yeah, okay. Oh, it's the AI coming to get us.
Yeah.
So, while we're on the subject of The Mandalorian, it reminds me of something that, to bring up, I would have to spoil part of The Mandalorian. So,
okay, as long as you warn people, it's okay. Go ahead.
So yes,
Go ahead.
I'm going to bring up something that spoils. I actually haven't watched the season yet, but season 2, the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian. Have you watched it?
Wait, you haven't seen season 2?
I've not, but I know that I have been spoiled what happens at the end of season 2. Have you watched it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not going to spoil it.
I probably don't remember it too well, but go ahead.
So I think, and I am reasonably sure that you're going to agree with me on this. I think what made a lot of people really not like The Last Jedi is what they did with Luke Skywalker's character.
Agreed. Very much agreed.
I mean,
I think it's disgusting. Go ahead. Finish your thought before I dramatically put too much emphasis on it. Go ahead.
We live in a day and age where there are very few, just straight up good characters, right? Nowadays we have to root for the anti-hero, or everything has to be dark and gritty.
Yeah.
And Luke Skywalker was one of the few popular characters that, he embodied good. He embodied hope. His entire character arc culminates in, not beating the Emperor in a duel, but in redeeming his father. Right?
Yes, and none of that was easy. It's not that they just made him automatically good and skillful. Everything was hard for Luke. His choices were hard. Fighting was hard. Darth Vader was a scary opponent, and he had to face him anyway. Everything was hard for Luke, yet he made good choices. And by just miraculous circumstances, or the guidance of the Force, whatever you want to say, he managed to survive and to succeed in his ultimate objective, which is to become a Jedi.
Yeah, and Luke's victory, he was not proclaimed a Jedi by anyone else until he faced the Emperor, and instead of striking down Vader, he threw his lightsaber away and said, "No, I'm not going to do it."
Because it wasn't about fighting the Emperor. It was about becoming a Jedi. It was about what he was. And, I mean, he probably couldn't have defeated the Emperor anyway.
True.
I kind of think that his whole, whatever he was doing, he was following the impressions from the Force. And he was kind of being somewhat guided that way. Anyway, go ahead.
So, he didn't go there to kick butt and take names. He went there to try to save his father. So,
yeah.
His entire character arc is, not his entire character arc, but his main arc in Return to Jedi is that I found out Vader's my father, and now I'm going to try to save him.
Yep.
Darth Vader, the guy, in the prequels, we see what he did as Vader. He killed his friends, he killed children, he helped install a dictator. Even with that, Luke risked literally everything to save him.
Yeah.
And then in episode 8, they decide, oh, well, I thought he might fall the dark side, so I'm going to kill my nephew. Or I thought about killing my nephew.
Mm-hmm.
And
he risked everything for his father, yet he's not going to risk things for his nephew.
Yeah. And then when that goes poorly, he runs away.
Yeah.
And hides.
Mm-hmm.
Luke Skywalker.
Because the Jedi need to end.
Yeah, and
even though the Sith are rampaging through the galaxy, I mean, is it the Jedi need to end or the Sith need to end? Which one is it?
And it's not even that. And I think that didn't sit well with people because, Luke was one of those characters who was good. I mean, we live in a day and age where like even they they made they had to go and make freaking they had to go and make even Superman a dark and depressing character now, right? Luke
Oh,
was
did
one
they?
that, yeah, like,
This is probably new Superman stuff I'm not up on.
yeah, it's a newer, well, not really new anymore, but like the Man of Steel, yeah, we had to make Superman dark and gritty for
Well, side
reasons.
note, Superman's actually my favorite superhero of them all. I do like Superman the
Yeah,
most.
but
Batman's interesting and fun too, but I like Superman the most.
yeah, so but fans of Star Wars like Luke Skywalker because it represents. So did Mandalorian come out before or after Last Jedi? I think it was
Oh, that's a
after.
good question. Oh, I don't even know.
It was after.
I think it was, yeah,
It was
after
after.
makes a lot of sense.
So like,
And it's such condemning. Anyway, I'm interrupting your thought, but it's Mandalorian really puts the Rise of Skywalker to shame. It really does.
yeah, and there's like one particular scene that I'm thinking about, and I haven't watched the whole season yet, but I've seen clips of this scene where I don't know exactly what happens, but like the good guys are stuck in the dead end. There's like a bunch of stormtrooper battle droids or like whatever trying to kill them, and apparently they send out a call for help, and like one X-wing shows up, and I usually don't like reaction videos of like, oh, here's random people who like play up their emotions when they watch something, but I actually watch some reaction videos to this, and there are people who literally break out into tears when it's shown that it's Luke Skywalker coming in to save the day, because that's what Luke is supposed to do.
Okay, well, yeah. And I have to confess, a lot of people they joke about how these movies just are like playing off nostalgia. But there's a part of me that cheers every time. Even like movies where it's obvious they're just bringing things up again from the old series just to like do a cameo or something. But I always like it anyway. Like I don't care when
Oh,
yeah.
I think there's good ways to do nostalgia.
Yeah, as long I do want it done well. I'm just as long as it can be done well and not be too crazy, then hey, it's good.
I
Yeah,
didn't make
so when
my point
they
as well as I hoped, but
well, and I'm sorry, you make your point.
yeah.
Make your point to
So
the fullest. Yeah.
there's like, it feels like to me at least, the new craze in Hollywood is like, oh, we're gonna subvert expectations. So instead of giving people the character that they wanted or expected, they turned Luke into a grumpy, bitter old man,
Mm-hmm.
which, having just watched the original trilogy, makes no sense.
No, it doesn't.
Like,
Especially because if he's a Jedi, then that means that he's gotten rid of a lot of the bad negative things that people often carry with them. I almost view becoming a Jedi as like a deep emotional purge of the negative emotions, the bad things. Not so much that you become a robot or something, but because you have gained so much wisdom and enlightenment, and you've also learned to just let go of things. When things don't go your way, you've already let go of everything. The Force is your treasure and your richness and the wisdom that you carry. That's what's important to you. And helping people, being a guardian of peace and justice, that is what makes you happy and rich, is doing all of that. It's not like everyone else that just wants money and a reward and to have the biggest toys or something like that. The Jedi don't have toys. They don't really care about possessions. So for Luke Skywalker to become a Jedi and then become bitter because his students betray him, it's hard, because I think the Jedi are just, yeah, it's hard.
I could say something about your whole speech there, but that would just...
Say it. Go ahead. Derail it.
No, because that would launch us into part 3 of the absolutes argument, and I'm not doing that.
Okay. you
No,
the
I
dark
refuse.
side of you wants to revisit it, don't you, PJ?
We are absolutely not doing the absolutes argument again.
Okay, so
I regret bringing it up.
okay,
Pretend I didn't say anything about absolutes.
you will not talk about absolutes. Okay.
Only a Sith talks about absolutes.
Yep, and I'm not a Sith. I'm not going to talk about absolutes because you hate that subject.
Well, not so much I hate it, it's that we've already talked about it for like an hour.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that people are too dark. They I don't know what it is. I think people have less faith, or I don't know. It's like the spark of something is gone. Like the heroes have to be dark and disturbed, and they have to give up. And like Han and Leia, they're not happily together. They're separated and they're off on their own things. But they do try. I mean, when they get them together, I guess they are kind of positive towards each other. It's just that things were hard, so they left. I don't know if I really like that either with Han and Leia. And with Luke leaving, it's like the old group became bitter and fell apart. Yeah. I almost think that they were trying to go for like some sort of, like they were some old band and they had good music, but then they split up and went their own ways. And now it's like, let's get the band back together and we'll have a new concert. And
except when they don't.
But they don't. They don't actually get back together. And there's not even one scene where they have all the characters back together. And I just think, okay, you're not going to give that to us in episode 7, even though the audience deserves that. They're going to save it for 8, but they didn't quite do it there either.
Well, they
could have done it in 8.
They couldn't do it in 8 because Han was already dead.
Oh, that's true. I'm getting it all mixed up. Yeah. I fell asleep and he died the first time I watched this. But yeah, they didn't even get it together. You know, the first time I watched episode 7, it was at home and watching it on like some streaming thing. And I knew that Han was going to die, but I fell asleep like halfway through the movie. And then I woke up and I'm like, where's Han? He had already been dead. But so I missed his death scene the first time I watched it. I had to go back and like, how did he die? Okay, well, how did this happen? Oh, he just like talks to his son, and his son is like, you know,
well, I mean,
this Sith villain is now my daddy, and then he gets.
Well, to be fair, and this might just be because like after I watched episode 8, like in my notes I have like this entirely angry essay about how they're like not have like this entire essay about how it seems like they're not even really trying to redeem Kylo Ren anymore, because that's kind of an important subtext of Star Wars is redemption, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I wrote this big angry rant, about how in most of episode 8, like the only time when Luke and Leia talk, they pretty much say, yeah, there's really no saving Kylo. Like, it's like, it's Star Wars, redemption is the thing. So I put in this big angry rant.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then I was like, okay, I should watch episode 9 and see what happens prior to like carrying on with a big angry rant. And maybe I'm just a big softie, but I thought the scene where Han comes back and they kind of redo the scene where I don't know if it's like word for word, but a lot of the same dialogue is brought back up again when like it goes to Han Solo and Kylo talk, and Kylo kind of turns back to the light side. I thought that was a decent callback. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah. No, I thought that was all right. Yeah.
So I'm glad at the very least they went through with that. I don't see why they had to kill everyone.
I know. I feel like when I watched episode 8, I feel like this is just a movie to murder my childhood, is what it is. This is like Hollywood. You know that spaceship you liked as a kid? Blown up!
Well, I mean, at least they didn't, like, blow up the Falcon.
No, they kept the Falcon. And...
like how many Skywalkers died, like, right after they used the Force, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I get they kind of had to do it with Leia since Carrie Fisher died before they could film the movie, so they had to find a way to write her out.
Yep. Which is probably why they had Han Solo in that movie in the first place. I bet the original script was for Leia to talk to him, and they had Harrison Ford do it instead, because they just had to.
Yeah. And, like, the scene where Rey goes back to Luke's planet and, like burns down the ship she was on, I think that scene would make a lot more sense if, like, Luke was, like, still alive. Like, go ahead and have, like, the exact same dialogue, but I think it makes sense for, like, Luke to be able to, like, raise the TIE fighter, not the TIE fighter, the X-Wing out of the water and pull the lightsaber out of the fire, not as a Force ghost, but, like, still alive.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to turn this into a BJ fan edit.
Well, I think we should, actually. What I would do differently is I would have the Republic at episode 7, I would have the Republic there, and I'd have the Republic, like, functional, working. But I would also say that at this point, it's actually people who are upset because the old Galactic Empire had given them things. It was a profitable empire for a select number of people, which is where you get all those admirals and everything. Like, the Galactic Empire has some people it favors and some people it oppresses. It's not like the Republic, where they try to where everybody is just kind of, well, I don't know. There's not a lot of detail about the Republic, but where at least they have representation in their Senate and everything. And people generally get along and leave each other alone when they need to, and all that. And they're much nicer to each other. But you'd have a situation where they're trying to bring back the utopian society that collapsed when the Galactic Empire came about. And in episode 7, you see that there's another break, that there's a second civil war that begins happening. And that is that the people who loved the Empire, they're still in love with it, and there's a movement to bring it back. And that's where you would have things fall apart, is that there would be a Jedi that would that would be there. And I honestly think they should have had what's his name? Darth Maul. They should have just had Darth Maul.
Darth Maul being kind of dead.
Yeah. He would be a half Sith.
I guess they...
He would be, 50% off Sith. They got him on a special. But, I mean, he is a character. The other alternate would be, one of the Jedi fell. See, this is the hard thing that you have to fix, is how do you break the universe again after you put it together in episode 6? And I think probably the easiest way to do it is you would have you would probably have one of the Sith come back, which would be Darth Maul. And I guess you could have Count Dooku. You could just be a head on a robot body or something. Okay, that's kind of weird. But Darth Maul.
That's where I think, like, the Emperor coming back as a clone thing, like, could have worked. Like, say
Here's the thing, like, yeah, I get what you're saying, but it's like, what's the bad guy? Is the bad guy a person, or is the bad thing really not a person, but rather it's the dark side of the Force? What's the true evil that we're fighting against?
Well, except saying that the bad guy's the dark side. That's kind of nebulous. It's like what's dark? It's like the Force is kind of the Force. Like, how do you beat the Force? Light side, dark side, whatever.
Exactly. How do you beat it? You don't. What happens is that it's a cycle that repeats, because people are going to have the Force. They're going to be human beings. They're going to have, they're going to see what power does and how incredibly it makes you able to achieve things. And they're going to make the decision on whether they're going to do good or bad with that power. And it's going to be a hard decision because the temptation to do what you want to do and instead of sacrifice for something good, it's going to be difficult. So it's almost like either you bring back a Sith or you cause the cycle to repeat it all over again. So you have one of Luke's pupils who falls away, and Luke doesn't have to just train young people. He could train other people too. That's probably what you'd have to do. You'd have to get one of his pupils to fall away and to become the next emperor, in a sense, to become a Sith. And you would show how that person was just disgruntled with Luke's training and was feeling just like Anakin did, feeling like they weren't getting the opportunities they needed, that Luke wasn't seeing their potential. It was all about them, how they are just not getting what they believe they should have, and it's unfair. And so, as the result, they rebel, and they find the dark side. And that's how you would start to reboot things. But I don't like the idea of just like having the bad guys have a big galactic empire all over again. Even though it's great to fight stormtroopers and TIE fighters, it doesn't make sense that you just go from another dystopia where the empire is powerful to another dystopia where the empire just is back again. I would think you would want to build it up again. So the empire would have to find supporters again, and they would have to go to planets that love the galactic empire and, trade federations. There was groups of people who were wealthy, who had trade, that had like united themselves in a big business empire. And they liked the empire because they could make their own rules in the empire. And at least until the emperor, they realized how evil the emperor was and how they were just pawns of the emperor. But you would have to have that imperial support like come back again and support this Sith character.
Well, that's kind of where I think if you had to go with the route of bring back Emperor, I think that's where like Emperor clone could have worked as something to make it, instead of like a godlike being who suddenly empowers all the powers of every Sith ever or whatever. Oh look, the Emperor's alive. Here's our what's the word? Our figurehead to use the rally people back to the Imperial cause. Like, oh look, the rebels were lying all this time. Here's the Emperor. He's alive. Instead of the weird having to make everybody a galaxy-ending threat or whatever. Because the problem with escalations, that's at some point it just gets kind of dumb. Like, oh, there's 10 billion Star Destroyers and all of them can blow up planets.
Yeah, you're using quantity as emphasis. But then what do? Just have bigger and bigger quantity all over again?
It just turns into Dragon Ball Z at some point.
Yeah, at some point you have to realize, like, what is this really about?
You have to become a Super Jedi level Q to beat this next Sith. I don't know.
Yeah.
More dumb references that no one's going to get outside of a handful of people. Is Dragon Ball still a thing? I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't think most people know about Dragon Ball.
Like, people still know it. Okay.
They love anime, but I don't think Dragon Ball has really been as popular. But they know Pokemon. Pokemon's all over.
Pokemon never went away.
No.
Which is fine. Which is fine.
You like Pokemon, don't you?
I mean, I haven't really interacted with Pokemon that much. I like played a Pokemon game like last year during December because I work retail, and it was just a nice get home from work and turn off my brain kind of day, kind of
Yeah.
game to de-stress. But that was like the first Pokemon game I played since like the original one on the Game Boy.
Hmm. Yeah, I finally years ago saw the cartoons, and they're really well written. I think there's a reason why it's
Wait,
so popular.
I'm trying to remember. Did you go see the Pokemon movie with me and mutual friend?
Yes.
Okay, I couldn't remember if that was you or if that's someone that was someone different. I,
Can't
I,
remember. One of the many
I,
stand-ins that show up once in a while.
well,
Yeah,
I
I was
didn't
not
I
like
didn't know if
Pokemon
that'd
wasn't
be
really my thing, and I went into a
yeah
room
yeah
full of
yeah
people who
no
loved
that's
Pokemon.
that's
It was a weird thing to me.
yeah yeah that's kind of why I was doubting if that was you the way to go see it with us because like is that a movie Jeff would go see with us? Thinking
It's a movie I went to see, but it's not a movie I would really go see if I didn't realize what I
like
was getting into.
I mean to be fair I don't think any of us really knew what we were getting into. I think some of our other friends like hyped it up for us so we went and saw it and thought it was kind of disappointing.
Yeah. Well, it was the whole thing of the premise of the show is that you capture these Pokemon and then you fight them with other Pokemon, and this helps them stay healthy because Pokemon just naturally want to fight.
Pokemon
And
live for battle, not really, but
so in the show they talk about how it's like healthy for them. And so you have to fight. So there's an excuse, even though the audience really wants these Pokemon to fight, because that's the battle and the adventure of it all. But then in the movie, they kind of go to this other route and say, no, fighting's wrong. Why are we fighting? You're not really fighting. It's more like a tournament. Like you're competing, and it's full of fire and lightning and things that would normally be very dangerous, but to Pokemon, they're not so dangerous. So I don't get the movie. The story doesn't make any sense. So I agreed with you guys. It didn't make any sense. But yeah. But
okay,
yeah,
so
Pokemon's really well written. I thought the storyline and the characters and everything's kind of quirky and funny.
so
I get why people like it. And yes, now we're talking about Pokemon. And we're supposed to be
yes,
talking about Star Wars.
yes, now that we have successfully derailed from the fan edit version, so let's talk about the actual movies instead of what we would do, shall we? We're already
Oh, well, wasn't done with my fan edit.
yes, we are because we're already like hour 20 minutes into this.
All right. Well, I wouldn't make Luke Skywalker so sad.
Yes,
He
that
would be a
is-
happy Luke Skywalker. He'd be like, "Hey, everybody, it's a beautiful day. Let's see what we can do.
Beautiful day
Let's
in the
float some
neighborhood.
rocks,
It's a beautiful
everybody."
day for a neighbor. Could you be
He would be a Mr. Rogers style Luke Skywalker.
he he takes off the cardigan with like the force and hangs it in the closet with the force.
My goodness, Mr. Rogers would be a great Jedi. I mean, I would totally learn the Force from Mr. Rogers.
It's now my official headcanon. Mr. Rogers was Yoda's teacher.
Was Yoda teacher? That's why Yoda was so amazing, because he learned from Mr. Rogers. Anyway, I do like Mr. Rogers.
Who doesn't like Mr. Rogers?
Who doesn't? Yeah, the Sith. The Sith don't like. The Sith are always annoyed with Mr. Rogers. They're like, "Oh, he's so happy."
Only
and,
the
like,
Siths don't like Mr. Rogers.
We rather be grumpy. We don't want to talk about our feelings. We want to have them to be grumpy with
I
them.
do not want to be your neighbor.
We will rule the neighborhood.
That's why there's only ever for two Sith, because there's only two people in the whole universe that don't like Mr. Rogers at a time.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's exactly why. Okay. Yeah, so the Sith the Jedi, what is it? It's hard to get a mix up. Okay,
Yeah.
so the Jedi need to
No,
end,
no.
apparently, even though they actually don't need to end. Goodness. And the Rebel Alliance gets blown up except for one spaceship, which happens to be a Carillion Corvette, not a Carillion Corvette. What's it called?
Mon Calamari.
Yeah. I'm getting my Star Wars names mixed up.
So I'm going to stop you while I'm thinking about this. So I will say,
please do. One
thing I appreciated in Episode 9 is that they addressed the elephant in the room of. Well, if there's this great big giant fleet of Star Destroyers, why don't we just lightspeed kamikaze them like Holder did? And they say something like, oh well, that hardly ever works. That was like a 1 in a million shot. I'm like, well, they kind of DM hand wave it away, but at least they acknowledge the fact of, no, we can't do that because that'd be stupidly overpowered.
Yeah.
So.
Yep, because then you just crash every ship into every ship.
Yes.
And all the space battles are over.
It's like I'm glad they at least addressed that by saying, yeah, if we did that, if that could happen all the time, it would just kind of be how space battles went. Just
yeah, it's almost like if you had a teleport machine that could just like transport you from planet to planet, and then you wouldn't even need spaceships anymore.
Or if, say, you could just randomly light speed from planet to planet, like in atmosphere.
Yeah.
I saw them doing that at the beginning of night. I'm like, oh, Jeff's gonna love this part.
Oh, when they light speed inside the planet, like in the atmosphere.
Like it's Jeff's favorite thing. Let's get rid of travel time. Thinking they kind of do that themselves in like all these movies. They give themselves like less than a day to solve this problem. It's like, oh, we're gonna run out of fuel in 16 hours. I'm like, okay. So that's why they stopped and freed the horses on the casino planet. What was it?
They went there for some reason. They went there to get a hacker.
They went there
who could then get aboard the ship that had the machine on it that could like track them through hyperspace.
Yes.
And so they had to go find this person.
The machine that 5 minutes ago was entirely they didn't believe could exist until like, oh wait, sure it does. We just happen to have a blueprint of the First Order flagship that tells us exactly where it is for some reason.
Oh my goodness.
It's like, what? You didn't believe this machine existed 10 minutes ago. Now all of a sudden, for some reason, you have the blueprints that show exactly where it is.
Oh my goodness.
It's like, do you remember in episode 4, like the entire plot was to get the Death Star plans to the Rebel Alliance? They didn't just magically have it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and by the way, we're trying to find Luke. At some point we say, oh, R2 doesn't have the map. Oh, guess what? R2 has the map. If Luke didn't want to be found, why was there a map? Right?
Because R2 always knows stuff.
But they say in the movie, oh, it's highly unlikely R2 has the map. And like R2 wakes up, hey guys, I have the map.
I have the map, by the way.
I've just been sitting here I've just been sitting off the side listening to you guys like talk about this for days, and like I'm just gonna decide to wake up now and give you guys the map.
Mm-hmm.
And then the dagger. It's just
the dagger. Parade. Can I be honest? Like
a parade of MacGuffins.
9 would have been a great DuckTales episode.
Woo.
It's like, we got to get the dagger so that we can then find the other clue, and then that will lead us to another clue, and then we'll get to the treasure. So Huey, Dewey, and Louie need to go on that kind of a quest. It just, I don't know. Maybe it's just like one mystery and then another mystery. Oh, we're stuck now.
I mean, like they didn't even like need like a MacGuffin for that. Like so have the Sith Wayfinder or Waystone, whatever it's called, and have them find the clue saying that, oh yeah, the Emperor had one, and he always kept it with him. It's like, okay, where's the last place anyone saw the Emperor? The Death Star that blew up over Endor. So they go find the...
No, you're absolutely right. So they just go there to find it.
Instead of, oh, we have this dagger that tells us where it is for some reason.
Yeah, the dagger is completely unnecessary in the storyline.
It's like, it doesn't have to be a MacGuffin.
No, and they just kind of like... I don't know. And it's like they're making the Sith into this whole thing. Like, there's this whole order, and apparently the Sith had people under them. I didn't think that they had like servants of some kind.
I mean,
There's people that serve the Sith.
in like the books and stuff that Disney decanonized, I think at some point there was like a Sith Empire in that. I don't know how I mean, I guess it's somewhat canonical now, but
Hmm.
I don't know canon-wise where they explained that anymore.
Because it makes sense that the Jedi would have that sort of thing. They have lots of people who just are around the Jedi temples and they're just there to help. And they just live from generation to generation, just continually keeping up the temple. That makes a lot of sense to me. Because not everyone that uses the Force might be devoted to this. Other people need to be there to help out with it. And it's really just a small number, a small sliver of the population that can use the Force. So it's this whole thing, and you have people who serve the Jedi. But so that makes sense. But the Sith don't have anything like that. But apparently in Episode 9 there was a family. So the Palpatine had a family.
I don't know.
He had a child. That child had a child. He had a granddaughter.
I don't know. Again, I think that's where like the clone thing could have worked a little bit better. Like, say that the Emperor was always paranoid about the safety, so like he had a clone that he could like transfer his conscience into or like whatever, but like somehow the
Yeah.
clone just ended up like having like a normal life. And then like the
Yeah.
Emperor died and they went like in like the Imperial Remnant when they tried to find this clone to have him be the new Emperor, but he's like, no, I'm just a dude. And then that's how Rey's parents die, because Rey's parent was like Emperor clone who was just a dude that didn't want to be the Emperor or whatever. Like,
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
but I'm
Yeah.
gonna stop there because I'm not gonna turn this into another and edit, because we're already an hour and a half into this.
Yeah, we can stop if you want. I mean, the bottom line is we're saying what everyone else has also said. It's
Yeah.
too bad. It's too bad that this fell apart.
Well, like, I mean, like stop the conversation. I'm just saying, like, we probably don't have to do like the whole fan edit thing again. Unless you like really want to and make this like a 3-hour episode.
Well, I think it's hard. It's almost, this is more of like a brainstorming session than a complete fan edit, because I don't know if I have all the answers for this, but I definitely think that you should have a utopia that falls into a dystopia. So if we follow the whole pattern, episodes 1 through 3 is utopia to dystopia, and 4 through 6 is dystopia to the beginnings of the utopia, and then 7, 8, and 9 would be the break in half of a dystopia, where it's kind of like a mix. You have the utopia and the dystopia, and they finally break, and the two are more equal matched at this point. Whereas the good guys had all the advantages in the first 3 movies, the bad guys had all the advantages in 4, 5, and 6, and now it's a very even split. And lots of people know the Force. We wouldn't just have a handful. We have Rey who's learning it. We have Kylo Ren. We have all these people who know the Force. Luke trained a whole bunch of people. And they all now need to decide which side they're on. And we would have a few of them go to the Sith and a few of them go to the good. And what you would see is that the Sith guys, you really can only have 2 because they tend to kill each other off. They have a very minimum support structure because they're so jealous and hateful of each other. They just end up doing that. And the audience could actually see it rather than just having it in the canon and saying that you can only have 2 Sith. You would actually see that transpire, where the Sith actually killed each other, and all you need is a master and an apprentice, because beyond that, they're so greedy that they wouldn't really allow anything else. And then Luke would not be depressed; he would be banished. Because if you want Luke to be something hard to get, is that when this fracture happened and these Jedi started falling into a civil war in a sense, Luke became the he became banished from society as they became, because they kind of blame him. It's not that Luke blames himself. It's that
He gets
people in the universe
scapegoat.
blame him. He's like the Socrates. It's like it's his fault that we lost the war. It's his fault things are going wrong. Let's blame him. He was a teacher that was teaching people, but still were unhappy and he's the scapegoat, like he said. So people blame him and he's banished. And so he's not allowed to be there. He goes to this faraway this faraway Jedi temple to find some great answer for the Force. And he goes there, and you have Rey. She's a good character. I do like her character. I just think the writing should have been better. And then she
Yeah,
goes
they
to
just
find
amp
him.
up too fast.
Yeah, and I don't think they should necessarily just go and find Luke. I think Luke should show up. Like, she's in a bad situation, and he shows up and mentors her and teaches her. And the story should be about her, because she really is now becoming the main character. She's becoming the new Luke Skywalker character. So Luke now fulfills by becoming now like Obi-Wan, where he's teaching and doing things, and she depends on him a lot. But what happens is in episode, eventually Luke would actually go away, and he would disappear as he's confronting the Sith now, and then she would be left to face them, and then she would carry on from there. And I do like the ending where she goes back to Tatooine, to that same farm that Luke was raised on, and buries the lightsabers there. I mean, I'm okay with that, but anyway, it's something like that. It's not even a perfect idea, but I think that it should have been different. And the idea of a stormtrooper defecting, I'm okay with that. I think that a lot of things need to be changed about stormtroopers, because if you're going to clone an army, then you may not clone the same army every time. You might have different, it's like you're going to make a different batch of cookies. Not all cookies are going to turn out the same way. And it takes, in the prequel movies, it took like 7 or 8 years to create a clone army. It takes a while. You can't just like grow them immediately. They don't have that kind of technology. So the idea that they would just abduct people and then somehow brainwash them into becoming stormtroopers to fill their ranks, it's possible.
I mean, conscripts are a thing.
Conscripts are a thing, and so I think they should have been more, there should have been something to that, like with Finn's character. If that system of brainwashing people is so effective, how did it not work with him? There needed to be something different about Finn to where it didn't work right. And it could be that he also has the Force. Maybe it was the Force that helped him out of it.
Well, they do. It does seem like they imply a few times in episode 9 that Finn is at least somewhat in tune with the Force.
Yeah, and they could have played into that. They just kind of make it so that he basically he loses his comrades, and he realizes they're just following orders, and they're not really fighting for something that's worth fighting for. Anyway, it's the Empire. They're just big and bad and evil, apparently. But they should have gone into that. Like, how do you abduct people and then turn them into stormtroopers? And it would have been good to see some of that, like what the facilities are for doing that. And they would have also had clones. You would have had clones as well. They're just desperate to try to get more droids. Or, sorry, try to get more stormtroopers. Because a droid army has problems. They can be shut down. They can be redirected. They can be taken over. They can even follow their own programming to some extent. So it's almost easier to have clones that are, or brainwashed, abducted people to become the stormtroopers. So, yeah.
So kind of circling around a bit, because I don't know if you've ever actually said straight out. So So it was the first time that you watched episode 9. So
Correct.
all told, what? So like all told, what'd you think of episode 9? Was it? Was it? That's okay.
It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but the storyline was
A big mess.
obviously it was a big mess. Things happened in the storyline, and I feel like the writers didn't need to explain anything. Like, oh, Chewie's got arrested. He was over there. Now he's arrested. The Empire found him. And the characters, it's like they don't need to become powerful. You don't need to learn the Force. You just kind of have it, which is just stupid. I think not only does it cheapen things, I think character development where they learn the Force and they like what Luke had, where it took him 2 films to figure out how to be a Jedi, and then by the 3rd film, which is episode 6, he does really a great job rescuing Han from Jabba's palace, and you are able to see a Jedi for the first time do their thing. There was no build-up and transformation for that. And you can do the transformation in between episodes, like they did. So you see that they're learning, and then between one movie or another, they become a great Jedi. You don't really see that. It just kind of happens because they were lazy and didn't write it in.
I think they kind of tried to do that by like implying that Leia trained Rey between 8 and 9.
Yeah, I get that, but
So at
she
the very
does
least, they
plenty
kind of
of
tried.
Force stuff in 7 and 8. I mean,
Yeah.
Rey is a Jedi from the moment the movie started. She just kind of has to like go, oh, is this what you do? Okay. There's no like great length of training where she begins to get to know the Force, and she has to learn how to listen to it as well as control it. And I think Luke struggled with that, and he struggled with understanding the Force. He struggled with how do you like, it's almost like you can see into the future with the Force, which is how you make your moves. You can see what's going to happen next, and you're able to make different decisions based on it. And it guides you at the same time as you're controlling it. And it takes a while for Luke to figure that out. These movies completely negate that, and they just don't care about it. And I don't think that's all that great. And as well, this is the part that I don't think anyone really writes well about the Force, is that the Force, when the Jedi do their stuff, the real great power they have is their foresight. It's not how they can wield their lightsabers. It's not their flips. It's not that they can hold their breath, or that they can somehow do all these other tricks. And that you could come up with an infinite number of tricks. I don't think it should be limited as to what the Force can really do. It's a limitation of the person, not the Force. But the biggest, most important thing that the Jedi have a power over is the ability to sense what they should do next and what's going to happen. And it doesn't have to be a constant. It comes and goes. They could be troubled for a moment, and then suddenly they know what they need to do. They've foreseen things in the future, and the audience just is along for the ride. We don't know what they're going to do next. It's part of the suspense. And when they do something, you get a sense that they know what they're doing, and they are following some sort of path that they have an impression of. And I think that's really hard to write. It's really hard to write a character that can do that. It's complicated. And I think the people who wrote these movies didn't really understand that. And I think to some extent, I think the prequels also don't really follow that as well as the originals do. Because when Obi-Wan is doing his stuff, he knows what's going on. He has a sense that he's gonna run into Darth Vader, and he's gonna have to face him and talk to him, and it's probably going to be the last encounter. He has a sense of, oh no, this is not a moon, it's a space station. And he knows what's happening next. And he's controlling what's happening, but at the same time, it's almost like he knows that the Force is guiding him too. It's a weird mixture, but you don't get that senses in the other movies. And when Luke is taking on Jabba, he says, like, don't worry, I'm taking care of everything. Like, he sees what's happening and what's going on. He is not worried. He knows how it's going to end up. Even though it's a struggle in the battle and he still gets hurt, it's not that they're flawless and perfect, but that's what the real power of the Force is. It's the power to foresee things. And the Emperor is always talking about that. He's like, everything is just as I've foreseen. Like, his power is the same way. His great power is he knows what's going to happen next, and it's his plan. Anyway, does that make sense at all? I think that's the heart of what I find disturbing about the episodes 7, 8, and 9, and a little bit with all of Star Wars in general, is that I think they did this really great, interesting thing in the 70s and 80s, but I don't think nobody understands it or can quite duplicate it very well. It's a different kind of story. It's almost like Doctor Who, or Doctor Who, you're like, does he know what he's doing? And he fumbles, but kind of he knows what he's doing because he's incredibly intelligent and he has some sort of sense of time that other people don't have, where he's able to see things in a way that others can't. So he can think through a situation much better and differently than everyone else. But everyone kind of knows that he's kind of like that, but it's not really spelled out completely.
I don't know if I necessarily agree that like the Jedi can like foresee most things, because then like how does the prequels happen?
Yeah, it's kind of, you're right. It's not that they foresee everything perfectly. It's like a vision. You can see down an alleyway and you can kind of make out some of the things that are there, but it's not that you have perfect vision. It's not like you have the eyes of an eagle that can see things 2 miles away. And also the future is always in flux, as Yoda talked about, because in The Empire Strikes Back, Luke says, "Are my friends gonna die?" And Yoda says, "It's difficult to see." So it's like they can see into the future, but they cannot see perfectly into the future. But really, that's their big superpower, is that there's moments where the future becomes very clear, and that's where they kick butt, because then they can take on Java. But so it's like you have the superpower that they have, but you don't want it to be flawless. Like, you want Superman to be really powerful, strong, but still he's gonna like struggle a bit as he's trying to get rid of those nuclear missiles and throw them off into space. Like, you don't want to make him infinitely perfect, just like good, but you always want it to be like a mystery as to how incredible they are, so the audience is still surprised when they can achieve something.
Yeah, I was going to use that as an example, because I get where you're coming from, but I also think that is incredibly difficult to write well, because kind of going off the example of you talking about the Superman, is that the conflict in a good story about Superman is not Superman against the villain, but
his own conflicts. Like,
yeah, pretty much
him discovering who he is and deciding what moral decision he needs to make.
Yeah, exactly. It's his struggle as it's his struggle as pretty much an all powerful being to be human, which is,
does he save the world or does he save Lois Lane? Like, difficult things. Yeah.
Well, like, not even that, but I mean, like, kind of like what you talked about before, there's like not even talking about movies, like there's like a spat of like comics or whatever that kind of spin off the idea of Superman becoming the villain, because everyone's like, oh well, if Superman's so strong, why doesn't he just kill the bad guys? It's like, because that's the whole point of Superman. He's there to be the ideal.
Exactly, yeah. He won't do that. And in fact, his father told him, it's not your place to interfere. You are to be an example to them, but not to interfere with them. So he saves them as a way of being an example. But when it comes to justice, he just takes Lex Luthor to jail. He doesn't punish him for his crimes. He says, "Here's humans. Here's your guy. I just stopped him, but you decide what is right with him." Which is I always like that about Superman. Although occasionally he does punch a human, but it's very rare. He doesn't actually do physical violence typically. I think he does break it once in a while, but his character doesn't really commit violence against anyone. He just stops people. And he does it in a real dramatic, showy way with his superpowers, of course. But
I'm just over here laughing to myself because I know one of our few regular viewers, mutual friend's wife. At one point, I think she said she didn't like Superman because he's such a Boy Scout. Like, that's the point of Superman.
yeah, I really like Superman. I do.
It's like he's not supposed to be this deep, dark, conflicted character because that's just not what he is.
He's not.
You want that? It's Batman. That's why you have Batman.
I like Batman too, though.
Yeah.
It's not that I hate one and love the other. I like them both, but Superman's my bigger favorite for sure. Yeah, because I like how Batman is. He is good out of the darkness of his past. I think Superman is a good person. He comes from good background, and he has a good, loving parents, and he's good. Everything is good. He just wants. He has tragedy too, because his father dies, I think, but he wants to do good in the world, and he wants to. His main goal is to, I think, please his father who he idealizes. Batman wants to take the pain from a broken world and somehow bring justice into the world. And so, yeah, it's dark and twisted. He's a great character too, with really great villains. Batman has really good villains, which I think is part of the reason why he's so popular. It's not even him. It's all his villains that are so interesting. Yeah. And so, and I think the writers of these Star Wars movies, episodes 7, 8, and 9, I think that they like negativity too much. You know, it's okay to have a Batman villain or to have a disgruntled villain that turns around and has a story arc. There's so many different story arcs. I just don't think this particular one works for Luke Skywalker. Because Luke Skywalker, he has his own troubles and he's a whiny kid in the beginning, but he's really more like Superman, where especially after Return of the Jedi, where he has become a Jedi, he has chosen his path. And even though he would have been very grieved by the Sith and what they did and how, like, the betrayal of his student, I think he would have been grieved by that, and maybe he would have tried to find another solution. I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, I think that's more of an episode 8 thing, because I think they tried to turn that around with Luke during his small appearance in 9. He gives Rey her hope back, and gives her a way to get back to help. So I think they tried. I think they tried to reverse that in 9, but yeah. I think if they would have stretched like the 20 plot points in 9 in like different movie and just not have 8, just have like episode 7 and then like
possibly
episode 9.1 and 9.2.
So in this scenario, this new fan edit scenario, you can only replace 8. Everything else has to be the same. So what would you do differently at 8?
I would. Here we go. We're 2 hours in. We're still doing fan edit.
Yeah.
I would. I mean, we kind of already talked about a better way for them to find the Empire clone. Instead of having the dagger MacGuffin, have them find something that says that the Sith Waystone was always kept by the Emperor's side, and they go to where the real Emperor last was, which was the wreckage of the Death Star. And I would expand out the hunt for the Emperor a little. I would make like episode 8 like about the First Order trying to revive the Emperor, and then
Oh yeah. So it's the First Orders on a quest.
yeah, yeah, have that be have that be episode 8 because then that would make the
They long
because,
for the glory days of the Empire.
because then that would make the opening of episode 9 make more sense. Like, oh, the Emperor's alive because like the entire last movie was about the First Order trying to bring back the Emperor so that they could.
Well, even if they could like find the Emperor, like his like remnants of his tissue, maybe they could just clone him. And they could be like, yeah, we're cloning the Emperor because we just desperately need our leader back. That
Yeah,
yeah, because they're all obsessed followers.
yeah. I mean, it sounded like a great plot, but like outside of like totally rewriting the plot, kind of working with
It's
what
better. I think
yeah,
what you have is better than
kind of
what
working
they
with what we have.
Yeah.
But yeah, again,
It's
that's
just, it surprises me that nobody in this whole, like in 7, 8, 9, as they were doing this and the storyboards and the script was being written, nobody said, hey, wait, are we sure this is good enough?
well, we
Like, are we
also
sure this even makes sense?
well to be entirely fair, we also don't know like what pressures they were under, like how much freedom they had, how much was like script by committee or whatever.
Well, and the problem is even if they didn't have much freedom, I mean, somebody had the freedom. Some executive person was like, no, we got to control these people. Um, and it's hard to really say.
Well,
And I don't blame them. I think it's a bad situation. Star Wars is an iconic thing. It's almost like toxic for a career
it's
because people have such high expectations for it.
yeah, it's like everyone's dream, like, oh, I want to write the next Star Wars until you're actually in that situation and you have all the expectations in the world, what like
I know.
aimed right down on you.
Yeah, I actually, to defend them a little bit, that's a terrible situation because
And
the audience will have such high expectation.
and I dare say there had to be some corporate interference in there somewhere because how else do you explain the weird cat bird things on the planet other than those were make really cute stuffed animals? Let's put those in the movie.
Well, I don't blame them for that. But yeah, there were probably people who wanted merchandising, and so they force certain things into the storyline. And movies are typically made that way. They start out from like a book, or they start out from a script from a pile, and they decide, well, this is a good movie, but we need these things or that things, and people come along and they have their own ideas. You have rooms full of creative people. You have actors that have creativity. You have all these writers. You have all these other people, and they all want to contribute to it. So they go and they all have their ideas of how they want, and an actor will see their character very differently, so they'll want things in the storyline changed and lines rewritten. And in the end, what it's almost like it's not like a book where you have one author sitting down writing out a book. Of course, even then, their publisher might boss them around, but it's really an amalgamation of many different things that come together, and it's hard because you can very easily end up with a huge spaghetti mess
Yeah.
of people who were all in the kitchen at the same time making different food that somehow ended up on the same plate. It's just, what
Yeah,
is it in the end?
yeah, I think we kind of said earlier, and there wasn't a George Lucas behind these movies. I'm not saying there had to be George Lucas, but there needed to be like
Someone who knew
yeah,
the vision of things. Yeah.
yeah, that's what I was looking for. There had to be one person who knew where they were going and help everyone get there. And in this case, just I guess that should have been like the one producer that was on all three movies, but she just
there were lots of people.
didn't work.
Yeah, there were lots of people that were in that position where they could have done that.
But they didn't.
They didn't, and I don't think anybody really has had a lot of experience with this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you had Kathleen Kennedy, who she's worked on some amazing stuff.
Yeah,
and so You would think
Yeah,
that she would be the perfect person for this
yeah,
because
and
her history is flawless, and
yeah,
she was part of Star Wars as far as I know, like
yeah,
the
she.
original.
I don't know what her history is, but she was the one credited producer on all three movies, so it should have been her to kind of keep the to
This is where
to kind of keep the plot on the path, and I guess to be fair, I don't know exactly what I don't know what a Hollywood producer does, but there need to be someone to keep the wagon train going in the same direction, and
yeah.
no one stepped up to it and did it, and it
Well, from my
shows.
understanding, Hollywood producer, what they do and don't do is kind of depends on the situation, depends on the film. They can do a lot or do very little, but they're the ones in the end that put everyone together. And so depending on the situation, they might be very involved or not very involved at all. It just depends. But yeah, somebody should have really put the group together and said, no, we need to do this right. Here's the storyline. Here's the direction. And I would, if the thing is even if they had this terrible idea and they went with it from episode 7 and they just went along, then okay, they had a bad idea. It feels like it was worse than that. Like they didn't have any idea. And there was really a small group of people who were keeping the storyline secret because they didn't want the press to leak it or something like that. I don't know. It's very theoretical.
Yeah,
We don't know what happened, but it's probably Abrams' fault. I
but
don't.
Jeff blames J.J. Abrams for everything. Yeah.
Well,
No,
I think he has this. He gave this speech once where he had like a box or a bag or something, and he said, "Hey, there's something in the bag. You don't know what it is, and if I hide the fact that." And if I don't tell you what's in the bag, then you'll be more interested to find out what's in the bag. And I think he understands that you have to hide things from the audience in order to get the audience intrigued, which is a principle. But there's a problem, and that is at some point you need to take what's in the bag out, and the audience needs to be surprised by it. It's like, I think that with J.J. Abrams, it's like he lures the audience into this grand plot that they're going to be looking forward to, that'll be revealed, but it's just a carnival attraction. It's like, come here, everyone, come see this greatest, most awesomest thing. Just pay $5 and you can go in and see it. And then you go in and it's like, oh, is that all that it was? In fact, there's a really great scene from Firefly where they do that, where everyone's like, come see alien life. It's amazing and incredible. And here, just step right up and pay your money and you can go in and see it. It's proof that there's aliens in the universe. And they go in and they're like, oh, it's like a upside down cow fetus or something like that. It's not an alien at all. It's just there. And
well,
I feel like with Abrams writing, his movies are... I have not seen all his movies, so maybe he has a few good ones, but a lot of his movies are like that, where he's promising things, but there's really nothing to promise.
Well, in this particular case, I don't know if we can... There's blame to go around, but I don't know if we can lay the majority of the blame on Abrams, since the one movie where his input was small to none is the one that was the biggest dud.
Hmm.
Though,
but that doesn't prove that he didn't mess up, though.
I'm saying like I said, there's not blame to go around, but I'm just saying that in this case, maybe this one time, maybe it's not. Maybe it's not
agree.
entirely his fault.
I agree, or concede, whatever it is, but it isn't entirely his fault. It isn't. I think where it really comes down to is not so much a blaming an individual. I think that it's
which is real amusing coming from you after that conversation.
I know, because I feel like I blamed you. Well, let me fix my statement or make it more correct as to what I was trying to say, or whatever. Whatever.
Dear Mr. Abrams, I'm sorry I blamed you for everything.
Yeah. I think the real problem is that Star Wars movies, everyone thinks that they're easy to make, and they're not. They're complicated storylines, the Force and the Jedi and the highs and the lows and the storylines that kind of like mirror each other, and to be able to put these movies together, it's difficult. It's very difficult. In fact, the original producer of Star Wars from the 80s, he had an interview that I saw long ago, and they asked him, so Return of the Jedi is a great hit. It's really great. Are you going to make another movie? And the producer said, no, we can't do it. These three movies have been like lightning striking in the same place 3 times. It's been an amazing success. We can't keep repeating this forever. We have to play it safe eventually and just say, we're done now. We're not going to make another one because eventually we're going to mess up. That's what he said. I forget his name. He was the executive producer. Not George Lucas, but there was another producer that was part of the project. I could look up his name, but yeah. So I feel like part of the success of the original movies was just kind of accidental. There was a lot of talented people and good writing, imaginative stuff, but there was also some amount of success. So if you're going to dig up Star Wars again and make new movies, it comes with an enormous amount of risk. And I don't think anyone understood how risky it was. So they just kind of like went in there and did it. And now we have these episodes.
Well, yeah.
But at least we have The Mandalorian. I think it's all worth it just for The Mandalorian.
Mandalorian. Yeah, I need to watch the rest of those.
Yeah, and The Mandalorian, it's not like epically awesome, but it's fun. It's fun in its own way. So I actually am glad at least that Disney has been able to make a few things that have worked out well. And there's another Star Wars movie that we'll probably never review, which is Rogue One. But I thought that movie was all right. I would change only a couple things in it, and beyond that, I thought it was really good.
I need to watch that at some point.
You've never seen that?
No.
Oh my goodness. I'm shocked that you've never seen that.
Next
that was
episode,
a major Star Wars thing that came out years ago.
Did that come out before or after the sequels? Was that during the sequels?
It came out before the sequels, and it was good. It was well made.
Why didn't I see that then? I don't know.
So it's like, that's part of it, is that Rogue One really wasn't that bad. It was a good movie. I just wish that in that movie the Rebel Alliance wouldn't screw up as much. They make the Rebel Alliance like into these inept people that screw everything up. And I don't like that. Other than that, it's actually really good. Spot on, good movie.
Rogue One came out after The Force Awakens, so maybe that's why I didn't
go see I guess it. I'm wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, Rogue One, yeah. Force Awakens came out 2015, Rogue One came out 2016.
Yep.
And then Last Jedi came out 2017, and Solo came out 2018, so maybe that's why Solo bombed.
Well, I think Solo also had problems with it, but also that was the point where people were starting to realize that these new movies weren't all that great. Because people love Star Wars. Oh, I can't wait to see Star Wars. They were so excited. And then after a few films, they were like, oh, I don't think the writing is as good in these. They're not really Star Wars-y. You know, the thing is it may not be possible. Our real problem, BJ, is that we're expecting Star Wars to be good all the time. But really, to make a good show, you gotta mess up sometimes. I mean, Star Trek usually they make a lot of mistakes. The first season of The Next Generation is hard to watch. Some of those episodes are not great. But then
and like only half the Star Trek movies are good, right? It just turns out there are ones that are evenly numbered. What a coincidence.
According to how people commonly like or dislike movies, the odd ones are the ones that are difficult to like. But it takes effort it takes a couple of tries to get it right. And maybe with Star Wars, they need a little bit of failure to learn from their mistakes.
Well, we'll see if they learn from them, because there is at least a number of other Star Wars movies planned, whether or not they never actually happened. We will see.
I think they should make more. I do. But I think they need new writers, and they need to do more. They need to do more TV shows where they kind of test out a writer and test out a character, try to find somebody who has a knack for this very particular type of entertainment. I think Star Wars it has its own niche to it, where you can't just take any old writer and plug them in. It's a very particular kind of adventure story. And you don't want to break the universe, so you got to have a writer that's not going to invent something that makes the whole universe not make sense anymore.
Like say Lightspeed Kamikaze attack. They have to DM handwave. They have to DM handwave away in the next movie.
Yep, exactly. Which is exactly what they did in Star Trek 2. They decided to create a technology where you could just transport from planet to planet. You don't even need starships anymore. Oh well, I guess we won't need to get a crew and get a ship and then travel somewhere and make decisions on our own, because we can just warp in whoever we want from another planet.
Oh, never change, Jeff.
Never change.
Okay, we are to the point where this is probably going to be a longer than 2-hour episode, even after I edit out all the dead space and audio, so...
Yeah, and I don't think we really said much. But we need to get back to Godzilla movies. That's what we need.
I kind of thought this was going to be a shorter one, because I was dead set on not letting us make this into another fan edit session, but there we went. It was another fan edit session. Sorry, everybody. The good news is we're not going to do it again, probably.
No.
Get back to the. Well, it was fun deep dive into Star Wars. I'm looking forward to not having to try to find time to watch 3 movies between episodes.
Yeah. Let's just get back to a good monster movie. That'll be good.
It's like, believe it or not, it was actually my idea to watch Star Wars movies in by trilogies, because I figured Jeff would like doing it. But yeah,
I did like it. It just
ended up being a lot of work.
I'm just old and bitter, like Luke Skywalker was.
I'm gonna show up on Jeff's doorstep with like a VHS copy of the original cut Star Wars. He's gonna hand it out to him, just gonna take it and throw it down the stairs or something.
Yep. I'll watch it. It'll be appeased by it. Except I don't have a VCR anymore. Goodness.
Oh boy. Okay, so
what else is there to say?
I say this is your last chance to talk about Star Trek.
It's your last chance to talk about Star Trek. They're gonna tie you up,
lock
you into an institution after this. It's your last time to talk about it.
It's your last chance to talk about Star Trek in a Star Wars episode. Who wins the fight, Imperial Star Destroyer, or like the Enterprise?
You know what'd be funny? If like Q showed up in the middle of a Star Wars episode, a Star Wars film, and just showed up and said, I don't know, gave wisecracks about how they're a feeble species who fight against each other. And
I don't think Q would really work in a Star Wars setting.
No.
At least not, well, those who have a good enough writer, anything works, but I saw on my YouTube feed like clips of Q in like the new Picard series. Like, oh, if Picard's doesn't count with Q, I'm like, I'm not going to watch that because I have heard things about the new Star Trek TV shows and I don't think I would enjoy them.
It's kind of an episode 9 situation again, where there's a lot of writers who think they know how to write things, but I don't think they do.
Oh,
I don't think they understand what the show's really about. And by that, I'm not saying, oh, you have to follow these rules. What I'm saying is, I don't think they know what made the audience love it.
No,
and so they're making just another thing.
Yeah, from what I know about the new Star Trek series is it's like mini episode 8s.
Yeah. I haven't seen it because I'm not sure if I want to put myself through it. What is with writers in Hollywood? They the last decade, they kind of stink.
No,
I'm going to be honest. That whole industry and many different companies, they're just not doing very well.
no. At some point, they decided the big money makers were dark and gritty and to subvert expectations. So now everything has to be dark and gritty, and all the heroes that used to be good and noble have to be shaded and cruel.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if like people go to universities and get a degree as a writer and they actually, read things. They read like the Hero with 1,000 Faces. They do research on stories and they try to come up with things. Instead, they're just like, they find people off the street that are having enthusiasm for movies and they just like let them write a script or something.
Well, like even if you got someone that majored in English, like what other kinds of books they make you read in high school, right?
Yeah.
It's not anything good and uplifting. It's all like it's all depressing stuff. Like old men.
Maybe that's they got some like
Mice and Men, Old Man to Sea.
Yeah. That's what they did. They got some Russian authors from the 1800s and like traveled through time, got them to write scripts in modern day about all the depressing characters, and now they're all sad. And
I've not read a lot of or like any Russian literature, but there was some book I read. I forget what it was, but there was a line that made me laugh. It's like a sci-fi setting. Some guy was talking to some guy that was like extolling the virtues of old Russian writing. The guy's like, I read a Russian book once. It was 600 pages of people being sad, and then someone's aunt died.
Okay.
So I don't know.
It's like country western music, but in Russia during a revolution, and everybody's sad, and it's cold outside.
It's cold outside.
Oh my goodness! What are we talking about?
I don't know.
But it's better than what we were talking about.
Is it?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know.
How do we get on Russian literature from Star Wars?
Okay.
So yeah, I will say that if we're talking about the sequel trilogy, to kind of wrap things up, the episode 7 wasn't quite as bad as I remembered. Episode 9 was not as bad as I was afraid it was going to be. Episode 8 still sucked.
Mm. But they're all bad. I don't think any of them are good.
They're not great.
So number 7's probably the least bad.
Yeah, I think so.
Right? That's only because they hadn't yet messed everything up yet.
So
part of that. And that's the one where they're following another storyline too.
It's like I do wonder if all the sequels were kind of okay, do you think people would still hate the prequels as much as they did before?
Yeah.
Because I think the prequels kind of got a second look from Star Wars fans, like after The Last Jedi happened. And people feel better about the prequels than what they did before.
Yeah. Yeah, the prequels have some real problems to them. But there's parts of the prequels I really like. And there's some aspects. We went through the whole thing. We don't have to talk about it again.
Yeah.
But
I
would say the prequels are definitely better than the sequels, though. In terms of quality and watchability. If I had to watch between the two, I would probably watch the prequels again.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, I don't really watch Star Wars much anymore. I've seen the original trilogy so many times that I don't watch it anymore. I know the parts inside and out. I don't need to see it. And the other movies I'm not really interested in rewatching. The only thing of Star Wars I'm really going to watch now is probably new episodes of things as they come out.
Well, you heard it here, folks. Jeff never has to watch Star Wars again.
Yeah, but I will sometimes watch a Star Trek movie late at night if I'm in a weird mood. And there's like I'll watch a old Star Trek episode, and I love Kirk and McCoy and Spock and how they're all friends. They have that team camaraderie.
So join us for our next series of episodes where we watch. Where in one episode, one episode we watch the odd number Star Trek movies. Next episode we talk about the equal number Star Trek movies. No, we're not doing
goodness.
that. That was a joke. We're not doing that.
No, we need to get back into an
we need
old
to do. We need to do one
movie.
We need to do one movie at a time. Doing this multiple movie business was a pain.
Yeah, this was more of a general discussion about Star Wars. It's not really specifically about anything to it.
Yeah, we did end up tangenting over the place for across these 3 episodes, 6 hours.
Yeah,
looking for
it's a lot.
Looking forward to getting back to episodes that don't take an entire week to edit down.
Yeah. All right, I think we're done.
Okay. Are you sure?
Am I sure?
I'm giving you one last chance before I end this.
No, I do like Star Wars. Generally speaking, I'm still a fan.
Well, so that was us.
Force lives on.
Oh yeah, I guess May the 4th be with you. Right? That's why we're doing this now, because this episode's gonna release the week of May the 4th, and that's a really dumb pun, but here we are. May the 4th be with you.
You know, the funnest thing about Star Wars is just playing a video game and like flying an X-Wing around and blowing things up. See, that's where Star Wars gets fun. It's a great storyline for video games.
When was the last time you played a Star Wars video game, Jeff?
I still have, what is it, like Battlefront? That's a good one. That's an old game, though. I'm not new. I'm old and forgotten.
Okay, when was the last time you played it?
Dang it! Why do you have to prove me wrong every time? I think I played it
because it's what I live for.
a few months ago. Yeah, I don't play it often. It's been a while. Been a few months, but I used to play it all the time. It was good. I would have play Weird Al music. He plays this song like I Think I'm a Clone Now. I would play that at full volume while playing Battlefront as a clone trooper. I would do that after like a week of hard college classes and work and all that stuff. I'd unwind with that. It was fun. Real fun.
You are strange.
Yeah. I definitely am not normal. I wouldn't even know what normal is, to be honest. Like, what do normal people do, BJ? They like go in throughout the world and do normal things. What is even that? Like, I don't know, sit down and talk about things?
One of these days,
other than Star Wars.
One of these days, I'm gonna learn better than to give you a chance for one more tangent, because
okay.
I don't know, dude. Okay. Yeah. If to the one person made it this far, hi. It's probably me, making sure the video recorded okay. Hi. Hello, me. No one else made it 2+ hours into this.
At this point. None at all.
They're like, okay.
I'm done.
Okay, we're done.
I promise I'm done.
Last chance to do Yoda impersonation, so do it I must. Okay. Well, thank you for listening to this, to I guess these last 3 extended episodes of the Wandering Tangent podcast. We probably won't do it again. I mean, we're going to podcast again, but not do 3 episodes at a time, so we have to talk about it for 2 hours in a go. Because no one's listening to us that long.
Yeah, I probably don't want to listen to us that long.
I'm BJ.
I mean, even talking for that long is exhausting.
That's why I'm trying to end it, but you just keep going. Okay. If you stop talking, you can end.
I'm silent.
Thank you for listening to the Wandering Tangent podcast. I'm BJ. With me was Jeff. Believe it or not, we actually like the Star Wars movies, or at least some of the Star Wars movies, despite how we talked about it last 3 times. But yeah, well, get back to our originally scheduled program of completely random movies after this, so we'll see you in a couple of weeks. what to watch. We don't know because we don't plan that far ahead when we're not watching Star Wars. So
No, we don't plan ahead. We don't like, this is what we're going to do. No, we just kind of like fly through things and yeah, whatever happens, happens.
And Jeff just can't stop talking. I'm trying to do the eggs and Jeff just, here we go. But no, I'll take the blame for that one. I started that tangent. So I'm going to end it.
You did.
Okay. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.